Computer. I can't believe that. Ah, rats. Because this was such a great conversation. Oh well. Okay. What do you all think? What do you all feel about, or what are your experiences about inserting yourself into children's process? Do you have guidelines? Do you?
I feel like I also, prefer to be, a little bit removed as much as possible and appropriate. I sometimes find that, early on in figuring out really how to connect with each other, some children really use me as a bridge between each other. And like what you were saying about when they notice we're documenting them, they know it matters. Sometimes even just knowing that I'm there listening to them, it really gives them the confidence that what they're saying matters and also can help other children realize, oh, there's something here to hear. So that part of connecting them to each other or helping them realize the ways they are connecting, I think is one way I do more and more early in the year as they're learning each other and how to find each other in the space.
Yeah.
I love that word library. I was in a room today and we've been doing a lot of work with cardboard all around the school, and the children were like in this amazing, industrious, productive place building things out of cardboard. And back and forth to the teachers about ideas for skills and strategies of putting things together. So I do think it's okay to insert ourselves when it's skill building. That's usually what I say to the teachers. And the same way with, conflict resolution. We don't want to jump in right away, but sometimes we do have to teach them the skills so that next time they'll be able to do it on their own. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Anybody else? Oh,
I think it has a lot to do with the flow of the experience that the kids are doing. Um, we can wreck it pretty easily by jumping in with an adult agenda. Um, and if there's a great flow going on, and if there's participation and engagement and thoughtfulness, then I think we back away or we become an observer to that. And it's when the flow starts to break down and like you said, support is needed to either reestablish the flow or it's dying out and we want to bridge into the next thing. I think that's when the adult is helpful. And I see that when the type of activity that's going on in the classroom is the children's choice. I think about then other situations when you specifically are bringing together a small group with a specific goal in mind. Then the role of the adult becomes much more central. Um, because there's a different purpose and you're teaching the children or working with the children to make a plan for something or to learn a new skill or to share ideas and keeping their thinking on a certain topic. So I kind of see a couple different realms of when we may insert or not insert.
yeah. I don't think of that as inserting. I think of that as collaborating with
Right.
children, right?
Yeah.
So my interpretation of insert was they're busy in the flow
Yeah.
and you're stepping
Hmm.
in to
Yeah.
bring your agenda. Um, but yeah, I totally agree with you on that. The other thing is that sometimes our minds get busy and we think, oh, I could tell them this, or I could show them this, or they could do this, um, and instead of inserting ourselves, we can, keep our little strings too short to save notebook, and we can, um, you know, write our questions. I would love to explore this piece more with them. If it's important, you can always bring it back, right? It'll come back. Um, so that you see two children, you see but the children struggling with something and they actually get through it. You instead of on their own, instead of helping them through, that can be an experience you can bring back to everybody and talk about, let those children talk about what it was that they did to solve that particular problem. But yeah, good talk. I'm glad that we're now recording. So, and I apologize to Jackie and Andrea because they're not going to hear the whole first part of this. Okay, shall we move on to the questions that people wanted to have answered by Audrey and Katie? You wrote them down, right? Yeah.
I can also drop them in the chat too. Just the copy paste here. Just kidding, it's past the word limit. It's on the first slide if you want to look. But the first question was there was curiosity about other strategies that we tried before this that might have not worked. And sorry, I'm closing the chat now. There we go. One of the first things that we tried, or earlier in the year, the music artillerista made a song with them. Do you remember that, Katie? And it was like a song story where everybody came up with their own like piece of the story. Like on a drum, if there was thunder, somebody came up with that part and what that sounded like. And that was one of the earlier collaborative projects. And it worked in one small group and it didn't work in the other. It was just a matter of personalities. Um, but that was one of the earlier ones we tried.
Yeah, that was we've learned a lot, of course, about all of them and their personalities and how they mesh. And we've become very strategic. We usually the music artillerista we see here once a week, and usually we do it as a small group just because that's what works better or more easily in the space. So we might send about half of the class. And we've really kind of gone from sending who is available and ready and into a lot more strategy around the group.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have, like you were thinking, Pam, we do have a lot of big personalities who really want to take on thought leadership and are really building still the skills of seeing and hearing how that is landing with
Mhm.
other people around them
Yeah.
and learning to be responsive to that.
There are also some personalities in our class where if you have different information or more information on a topic than them, they assume that your information is incorrect, and that kind of stops any collaborative conversations or adding information together and turns into a you're lying situation. So we are very, as Katie said, very strategic about who we put together when we're doing these collaborative moments. And the hope is that one day we won't have to be that, but right now we're running with ankle weights so that one day we can run without them. The next question was how do we frame the group drawing to the group? We were very honest about running out of paper. We were like, oh, our stack is gone. Like that was the last of our materials. And then they showed up to school another day and there was one large piece of paper and no more individual papers in the classroom because we had fully run out.
And they would, continue to come like, oh, can I have a piece of paper? Can I have a piece of paper? And say, this is what we've got today. So if you want to draw, you can come over here and do some of that.
Mhm. But yeah, we would say out loud then how we were noticing there was this we would before we put the big paper out, we would say, we've replaced the paper 3 times today. Huh, we're getting low on paper. Huh.
Probably not going to work. I mean, really, because it's not a behavior, right? Really, it's not a it's a symptom, I guess, a sign that they want to draw, but they don't yet have um, the dispositions or the skill to make a meaningful drawing. It's as if maybe the next one will be satisfying to me, but they're not satisfied, right?
Mhm.
So it just goes. Um, children even it doesn't sound like they're still exploring the media because children who are exploring the media will just kind of do all kinds of motions and gestures with the medium and don't need to just toss it away. It really sounds to me as if they're not satisfied. So what do you think you can do to um, help them to gain the skill that they're looking for? This is where I would get kids in my class who typically had only ever had fat markers, pencils, and tempera paint in their hands. That's all the media they'd ever had. And they would come, some of them would come being able to draw, but some of them, or paint, some of them refused to. Some of them did what yours are doing, which is paper after paper after paper, just crumpling them up, throwing them away. Some of them, if you asked them to draw, they would cry. They just, one did not know how, or they thought they didn't know how to draw, but also didn't know that I was there and my assistant was there to help them until they could make their idea visible, right? And that was a message I always needed to send to them is, um, you know, or they would come and say, "Will you draw this for me?" And I said, "No, but I know that you can, and I will stay here with you until and help you as long as you want me, as long as you need me." And then I would use the study protocol for that. Um, and eventually in time, they would use the study protocol all on their own. Or they would skip steps and they would come to me and say, trying to draw, you know, whatever. I'm trying to draw my goldfish or something. And but so can I have a picture? In the old days, I had notebook after notebook after notebook with photographs and drawings so the children could choose reference because at certain point in their drawing development, that was helpful. But then once we had iPads, we just, looked up options and then they would choose a referent to use. But they knew where on the study protocol they needed to be, that where they could get their help from. And they would use it on their own. But in the beginning, they really needed to know that um, that I could help them make their idea drawn
Mhm.
on paper.
I'm I'm wondering because it is, of course, a very common refrain that we all experience the scribble the garbage, or parents sometimes complain that the backpacks come back with 7,000 pieces of paper with one little scribble, and you know is there a way to show the children how much we honor and respect what they're doing, and in doing so, get them to honor and respect their own work? Like having a sharing meeting, before they go home, and holding up, oh my goodness, I noticed this beautiful picture. Do you want to come up and tell me about it? And really giving them a little more sense of pride by doing that. And I wonder, sometimes that works, and sometimes you put it up on a bulletin board. And then in some classrooms, I noticed there's one classroom in my school this year where now the children do it. They're constantly running to get tape, and they're hanging their pictures all over the classroom. And that's really showing us that they honor their own artwork as well, even if it is a scribble bibble.
Yeah. But first they have to care to draw it, right? Because they're not
Right.
connected anymore with these, 700 pictures or scribbles.
Correct.
Yeah. So once they start making that effort, yeah. Do you all keep portfolios for your children? I know Sabbath does. Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
So, once they understood what a portfolio was, and I would put photographs of children's work in there
Hmm.
and dated, and the portfolios were where they could take them down and look at them, and they did retrospectives on the regular with each other
Hmm.
and any
Yeah.
adult who walked in the room, in fact. But in time, they themselves would say, "Would you put this in my portfolio?"
I
Because
love
it
that.
involved, you know, technology that they didn't have access to. But um,
Mm.
or else I would have, if I had your age kids, Kim, I would have had them do it.
Mhm.
But um, but yeah, but I think that's a little bit later stage, Gila.
Mhm.
You have to have something that, if it's a scribble that the child is connected to, fine.
Right, like the what
But
you described as the mapping, it looks like a scribble, but this is my mom and this is our dog and this is our, you
right,
get a lot of that. And I think, I don't know, the teachers know I'm like sensitive about it, because none of my own children that I gave birth to really did representational drawing till like 6. So I'm always nervous about where's our expectation and what does it say to the child who still can't draw a goldfish at 4 years old when the little girl at the table next to him can do it. So maybe I'm uber sensitive about that.
well, I think that, I mean, there's such a huge range. However, the child who doesn't draw till 6 but is interested in it, um, the reason for that, I mean, that's a time that where we're needed, right? And that's where the study protocol comes in, where you're offering support so that the child, I mean, and there is a natural place, by the way, where children want to represent something that looks like the thing, but they don't have the skills or the
Mm-hmm.
tool or the control or something. And
Right.
it's like co-regulating a toddler, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you're just giving as much help as the child needs
Right.
to make something that satisfies her. Now, then you're going to get, but that doesn't look like a goldfish,
Right.
and which is fine because and children then can borrow from your affect how to take that.
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody said that doesn't look like a goldfish, I would say, "Oh, are you trying to help so and so draw her goldfish?"
Nice.
And then I would ask the drawer, "What would you like to ask so and so what's missing from your goldfish?"
Mm-hmm.
So sort of um, turning them towards each other while not allowing that to become an insult. Now, children can use that as power. And I've
Yes.
seen that happen. So that's why you have to be there. That's where you insert yourself.
Right.
Um, you have to, I think, um, frame it in such a way that it is help.
Mm-hmm.
And I would do that sometimes is I would when a child was not putting what we call putting love into her drawing, um, then sometimes would send her to somebody else, say, well, will you go find a friend and ask her what's missing from your drawing, instead of me being the one who tells her. So then you're being helpful and not bossy or controlling. Okay.
I have a question about going back to the documentation we were talking about today. I was curious about what the time frame of the documentation was. Like how long have has your collaborative experiences been going on through the drawing and the sewing and the putting it up in the window? Um,
Let me see. I do have that information.
Did you say somewhere February, beginning of February? Did I see that somewhere, or did I make that up?
I think we started the upright collaborative sewing late January.
Yeah. The table
mhm.
paper was, I think, right when we came back from break in
Okay.
January.
Is it still out?
Oh yeah, we just put down a new one today and we hang up the ones that are used. Um and we have I would say that the one that we hung up today is I wish we had a picture of it. It's a lot different than this one. The
One,
circle table one.
yes, a sort of hurdle that we were figuring out how to manage with this is that our classroom is also used as an extended day space after school. And so for a time, we were struggling, I mean, for one thing, with the paper getting ripped up during extended day. So that was really hard. But we ended up finding these kind of like picnic blanket covers with elastic around the edges. So we've started being able to
Mm,
cover them when extended day happens so that we're able to just maintain them, but then also know if the things on them came from our class or other children.
mhm,
So that was a game changer just to
mhm.
know what's going on in the project. That helped a lot.
So that answers my question that it's been going on now for a couple of months that you've been actively working on your questions about ownership and um, possessiveness. So, what what might be some of the changes that you've noticed, like in the other parts of the day that you've noticed since actively creating these collaborative experiences?
I think I have seen, I mean, for one thing, I think doing this and especially doing this knowing we're bringing the documentation to you all and like just having an extra lens also on it, I think I've noticed a lot more about the class in general that I have theories that I don't know all the way about, but they're turning away back there about how we kind of got to where we are and what we're seeing now.
Mhm.
And especially, going back through some of the chapters in the book, Pam, I feel like there is a lot we can still do and could have been doing for much longer about just conversation and how we navigate that because sometimes I feel like some of our struggles in our class really come down to we have a hard time talking to each other and sustaining conversation without getting to the point of emotional, overwhelm and not being able to continue the conversation. And so I feel like I've noticed sometimes where having that activity going on gives them an opportunity to have a conversation. So I think I've seen some more of that, which has
Mhm.
been wonderful to just and trying to capture as much of it as I can when I can. I think also we made some just rearranging changes around the room because I sort of had this theory that I don't think really made it into the documentation we shared because I didn't know how to put it together into words. But I've been thinking over it in the back of my mind while we've been talking, and one of the things I think might have been going on with specifically the drawing and the discarding also included, I think there were some people who would come to draw something because they couldn't find something else to do in the room. And so as we figured them out as individuals and as a group more and made some changes, I think they've been able to find more of that stuff. And there were some people who would come to drawing because someone else was and they wanted to connect with them, but the drawing itself was not something that they, had a clear idea that they wanted to draw. They were just wanting, and then so sometimes that would turn into, a scribble and tossing away or trying to draw
Mhm.
exactly what someone else drew, which can be cool, but a lot of the times, as it worked out for us, could turn into an argument or get really quickly to the point of frustration and discarding it. So having navigating the rest of the room, I think has enabled us to dive more into how we want to approach this.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
makes sense.
And there was like kind of a on slide, I think it's slide 7, um, about the music artilleries are coming in and how some
Mhm.
children drew on the paper before the activity started, and then they became they felt ownership over the doodle that they made before the actual activity happened, and then there was some feelings about that, and one child was able to get over it, and the other child wasn't able to rejoin the group. That was the first group that did this. This was about half of our group. And then right after that, it was hung up. And then a week later, the second half did this exact project, but they knew that it was they knew the whole time that it was going to be on the wall. And so that second group was not possessive because they knew it was never going to be theirs. And so that like
Right.
that answered the question and also brought up more questions of like what would have happened if this group had gone first? Because that was the second group certainly had personalities that would have had the same reaction in the first group. And then when Katie and I were talking about it, that kind of that's what led us to want to do a recycled project, because that would be 3D and we can't hang that up. So we'd have to get creative with the answer to the question, what do we do when we're done? Because honestly, like there have been huge strides in some areas, but in their play, they're still very like possessive over the ideas and they're very defensive. And so we wanted to tweak it just a little bit to see if how they would be able to get creative and answer a much harder question of what do we do with this group project because we can't hang it up. Like, so
Mhm.
that was part of the reason we started the recycle materials project. And
Are
that's very
you,
much still in its infancy.
do they have an idea for that or are they just being inspired by the materials themselves?
At this point, we're inspired by the materials. That's something we asked families to send in, things that they had around as they were finished with them, tubes, cartons, things. And one challenge we have had around kind of the recycled materials stuff is we have been asked as a classroom on the first floor of the house and close to the front door to keep our space within a certain bound of tidiness, because
Mhm.
it's where people are gonna look in, visitors. Um, and so we're always trying to figure out like what can we do with this stuff that's in some measures trash that we want to have around to use. Um, but we are being told by our bosses like make your space look a certain way.
Yeah.
So we're kind of working out little hidey holes that we can have things and then bring them
Yeah.
out and say, okay, we're working on this. And since it's still very new, the first day I was kind of thinking like, oh, can we go in with a goal? And partially because it was, me trying to figure out a goal for the children, and partially just because they were really excited to start this new thing that we hadn't really done before. Didn't happen. They were just so excited to try, and I said, okay, yeah, we need to mess about with this for a while first and see. So at this point with that, we've only been able to do it a very little bit so far. Um, we're bringing out the materials to see what sort of things we might do and asking the children to just kind of work on the practice of drawing a plan and using that as they're starting to build and figuring out the ways that they can attach things into whatever they've chosen for their plan, which is all across the board so far.
Hmm.
Do they have attachment as a language, tape as a language? Do they have they explored that
We've
enough?
definitely done more with tape. Um, I feel like we have not used as much liquid glue within this way this year. So we've been, we've just had that be available as something to be trying and figuring out how it works and how it will, work or not work and the different ways of attaching they're trying.
I wonder
Do you
if
think the
your,
sorry.
I was gonna say, I wonder if your atelierista can help with that, exploring attachment
Mm.
too. I'm sorry, go ahead, Kim.
I was going to ask if you have the make do tools, like the cardboard saws and screws that are really good for attaching recyclable materials.
Our preschool actually just got some this year,
Okay.
so we newly have access to those.
Hmm.
But if
Yeah.
you've got metal or, your stuff isn't all cardboard, right? Or is it? It's all
Not
cardboard?
a lot of it is, but not all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. That will be interesting to find out um, what you end up doing, what they end up
Hmm.
doing. So you're going to ask them to come up with um, to draw plans, but then to negotiate one thing to make
That is, yeah, that's the plan.
plan.
Yeah. Right now they're after the first iteration of just messing about, now they're coming up with their individual plans just to have practice making drawing a picture of their plan and then following through with it. And then our hope is to eventually do a collaborative plan and execution and then figure out what to do.
I wonder if an intermediate step might be to create an intentional collaborative drawing on the big table,
Hmm.
so that you have a group and and you have a meeting with that little group away from the table. I learned you don't want to do it where the table and the materials are. Um, and because they're so familiar with it, they don't need to be right with the table and to have them negotiate one big picture. I don't know if that would work as well on a circle, but that would be an interesting thing to try anyway. Um, and see if they hold themselves to the plan that they make. Now, you probably don't, I mean, I don't see that you would necessarily want them to draw a plan for their drawing, but I mean, maybe it'll go there, but they could just decide. Or with anything else. I mean, that's what we had to do with the block platform because we did not want a whole bunch of little block structures that everybody was knocking over because they were trying to build something different on this big black block platform. We really wanted them to collaborate. And so sometimes we would just have to have a meeting. Sometimes it would come naturally that they would just, an idea would emerge and they'd agree and then they were making the Princess Angel Castle. But but um at other times they had to have a meeting that I may or may not have had to facilitate um, to agree on what they were going to make, that one structure they were going to make. And that is what ended up creating sustained engagement was that shared purpose. Were there any other questions that you wrote down, Audrey?
Let me see.
Or that
There,
you just wanted to ask us?
um, there was a wondering about what if we were trying to make something for someone?
Hmm.
Would that seem more meaningful? And one thing that just I think has come up in our recent talks and things we've made is I think some of them have expressed as desire to not 100% have what we make be for someone, but for it to kind of go on tour and for other classes to be able to see. So there, I think is some interest there, and at least just having it be something that we can share.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did the sharing thing with the story workshop stories. And
Mm.
so when it was time to take the story home, we would, anybody who, at our final meeting in the day, anybody who wanted to, ha have me read or um, sometimes them act out their story could do that. So that sharing piece is, you're right, it's really, it can be big. Anything
And
else?
s- it's not, it's still a thread that we haven't totally tugged on because we're focused on the recycled materials, but they have expressed interest in collaborating on a play together, which feels like the next natural iteration of collaborating, but this time so much more cerebral and not totally in materials as much. And this is like days old, so we haven't gone too far into it. But yeah, that's on the horizon, and we're excited and nervous to delve into that.
Have you told collaborative stories yet? Have you done a game? You can just say, well, I'm going to start the story, and then, and I would say, once upon a time there was, and then it's the next person's turn, and then the next person's turn, and the next person's turn, and I would be usually typing it as we went, so it was a story, and if it sounded like a play, and sometimes it did, I
Mhm.
would say, "Oh, that sounds like a play." And of course, you would do that once, and then they want to write plays.
Mhm.
It's a thing. It's a medium for them. But man, we had big projects with a collaboratively written play, and then of course there had to be costumes, and there had to be rehearsals, and there had to be tickets. Tickets were big. There had to be an audience. There had to be, but they would go for long periods of time on these projects to create these plays. And then, of course, eventually they wanted them to be movies. And so um, that's a great place to start with. If you infuse collaboration into all these different places in your day, the collaborative story, the collaborative um, construction, the collaborative, um, more than turn taking, more than um, your turn, my turn to do this piece or that piece. Um, it can move away from that possessiveness that you're looking for,
Mhm.
but it needs to infuse everything if it's your lens. Yeah. We only have 4 more minutes. Um, Does anybody have anything burning that you wanted to bring up to me or to the group? Um, any questions, any problems, anything you'd like to focus on next? Because I come up with my own ideas for what to make an article on, but you can you can participate in that want if you want to talk about asynchronously about something that I don't think about, then I would welcome
Yeah.
your request.
Well, this is more than 4 minutes, but when you raise that question of where do we put ourselves in, I guess it's the last thing that came into my head before I left school today. We keep having this with big body play, and when does it become wrestling? And, how many times are you calling the parents that somebody got scratched or like, and we know that it's just what they need, but we can't allow it. I don't know. That balance, to me, it's 40 years and I still haven't gotten it quite right.
So big feelings, big,
Yeah,
loud bodies.
yeah, and in the class I'm thinking of right now, there's almost never malice aforethought.
No,
There's never an intention of like, "Rawr." But still people are ending up crying and getting crushed and
thank you. That is a good one.
oh, thanks. Well, I welcome your insights. But I have been thinking about it for research as well, and it's just I've been struggling with it.
Good. Well, if I had anything to offer, maybe it will be just sort of the impetus for you to continue in your research.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That gives me something to think about. Anybody
Yeah,
else?
because I'm researching the way the teachers are handling it, but I'm also researching what's going on with the children. And I'm just praying that spring comes and they could be outside more and
No, because
more.
spring energy is I had a mystical neighbor once, and she would say, when anybody, the dogs, the children, anybody was getting wild, she said, that's spring energy. She was convinced that in spring that's what happened. Um, anyway,
I just also want to say, Pam, too, that I'm sorry I had to step away for bedtime. But I want you to know that everything that you're writing about and that we're reading, like I'm taking in and really experimenting all the time in my room. And it's already opened me up to so many places, like my kids were struggling with like line leader, right? Classic problem, who's going out the door first. And I brought a small group to like solve the problem. They'd like, map out their ideas and share it with each other. And, of course, some of them were like, oh, we're all going to hold hands in a circle. Like some of them were being strategic and other ones were talking about like how to give people hearts if they're crying. So we just don't want people crying. But then it went so left of like the biggest thing was a kid was like, well, if we make a chocolate factory in our classroom, no one will be sad. It won't matter who's the line leader. And now they've been building, chocolate factories out of clay and things. But it's just, I don't know, just following these and like doing experiments in more ways than I've been able to do in the last many years because of this class. It's been so empowering. So I just want to say thank you and know that like the work is happening, even though it's so muddled and we're figuring it out.
we
Yes,
all, I mean,
agree.
that's the name of the game, right? It isn't. Um, you feel like documenting that? And
Actually, yeah, I would love to go next. I mean, it might not be the chocolate factory, but I similarly, jumping off of you, Katie and Audrey have a lot of like collaboration things happening. That I'm curious about. So I think I would love to go next.
yes, thank you.
Okay.
That you're up for April. I can't believe April. Okay. But we all owe Katie and Audrey a huge thank you for your wonderful documentation and courage and collaboration. And so we're grateful for that. Yes, thank you. Kirsten's
Thanks.
sending floating hearts. I don't know how you're doing that, but it's very cool. Okay. So
Thank you.
we're
Thank you
set for
very
next
much.
week. Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you
So
for all the ideas.
yeah. Um, Sabbath is having a symposium, if anybody's interested. You guys want to talk about
Yes.
that a little bit?
Sure,
Good.
yes. Sabbath annually does a symposium. The last several years have looked a little different ever since, COVID came to the United States, but we're really trying to get back into the classic symposium. It's coming up towards the end of April. I want to say the 23rd or 24th. It's a Thursday evening, Friday, Saturday thing. The theme this year is the power of productive tension.
Mm.
And so there it will involve people visiting, getting into, groups that they'll kind of co do some cohort building throughout the time to share their ideas and what they're learning and wondering, classroom observations, and then on Saturday some outbreak sessions with a focus towards kind of interactive studio work because uh, there is a link, and I will find it and put it into our chat. I know I'm technically helping plan parts of
Yeah,
it, but
you asked the right person. They're on the committee.
Yep. And
um,
I'll be there.
Ooh.
And yeah, all 2 days anyway, Friday and Saturday. I don't know if I'm supposed to be there Thursday or not,
I
but
think Thursday, it's after school has ended, so it's just kind of for people who are maybe coming into town, getting them in, seeing the place.
yeah.
Yeah, I will track down the link, send it out.
I
It,
think I found it. I'm gonna drop it in the chat.
I will still also send it in the
Do
chat
that
that
so
we have.
anybody can have it because there are
Mhm.
50, I think I counted 50 asynchronous members in this group
Mm.
who are not, we don't hear from them much, but um, okay. And any last words? Anybody have any other requests for articles? Yes, Kristen.
You mentioned this story workshop.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've written up and that you can share with us?
Okay.
Or,
I'll add that to but realize that even though it's the same name, I didn't know that they had a story workshop and I didn't know, they didn't know that we didn't know each other had one. So,
okay,
and I just, by then I couldn't change the name because it was part of um, but I didn't put it in the book for that reason. It just didn't seem
oh, okay.
right having the same name as something that is something completely different.
Well, and these are just requests. Like if you,
No, no, no.
whatever,
I am
whatever
grateful.
direction you want to go off in, I think all of us are here for it and happy to follow along.
I'm
Uh,
grateful for that. Yeah.
But I guess my second thing would be, or curiosity, which maybe is connected to the story workshop. You were mentioning like sort of the progressions of children's representational drawing. And um, if you have any ideas or resources
Yes.
about that.
Okay. I'm glad I asked.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Have a wonderful month, and I'll talk to you in the chat room. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.